Hey guys, just let me know if I'm back, if you can see me, please. Am I back? Sorry about that. My browser crashed on me. So this time it was my fault. It's actually, I must say, it's the first time Firefox has crashed on me during a live class, so that's a new one. Hopefully he's stable again. Thanks for being patient, guys. Isn't it good for your nerves, Patricia? Sorry, even though my nerves feel like I've got to fix the problem. Okay, is everybody all good? Just let me know where did we bomb out so that I can carry on from there. I don't want us to miss anything. I'll just hang on a few seconds until you let me know where I was. Optical blending. Had I started the color wheel yet? Blending the greens. Okay. Okay. Fantastic. Thank you, guys. Let's go. So you use the yellow and the blue to mix a green. So there's your secondary color. By the same token, you can use the blue and the red to mix your purple. So now, as you can see, you've got different variations. For example, with our orange example, you've got different variations, right? So depending on, am I mixing a deep orange, or is it just a sort of an orangey red? Is going to tell you, do I start with the red? If it's an orangey red, then I'm going to lay down red first, and then a little bit of yellow over the top, in exactly the same way as it would happen on your color wheel. But if I've got like a sort of a mustardy color to mix, then I'm going to first lay down the yellow over here, and then lay just a little bit of red over it. So that tells you where to start. Do I add more yellow, more red? You sort of look at the color that you want and decide, is it more red or is it more yellow in the mix? So let's grab, say, this just little container over here with some orange on it. So if I look at that, I'm probably gonna think it's not a yellowy red, right? It's not a yellowy orange, I should say. So it's got to be a more of a reddy orange. So I'm going to start with this guy. I would start with the orange, and then I'd lay yellow over it. So now here's the question. Once you've laid that down, would you now then use the Derwent your blender to blend that. No. No. Remember, the minute you start blending things, that's when you start squishing things together. You're going to get this guy as close as possible to where you need it. So maybe, for example, let's stick with that. But let's grab a red and the yellow again. And let's say, for example, that was a bit of a shading that I needed to do. So now let's carry on over here. So I'm laying down my red. So it goes from that color to a darker, deep orange. So here I'm adding more red by pressing harder. So I'm first forming that initial shading using the red. So I'm going from lighter red through to darker red. So I'm pressing harder over here, softer over there. And now I'm coming in with my yellow to turn this into an orange. Pressing softer over there, harder over here. So I'm first going to get all that shading work done as far as I possibly can push it without using any kind of a blender. There's a good chance that there is as far as you need it. And only then, right at the end, when you're happy, you've got your full contrast and your full range of anything, would you come back in with your blender pencil or with your baby oil to smooth it out. So it's only right at the end. So I think it's probably better to do it this way, seeing as it's a shading. You don't want to be flipping between pencil and blender or pencil and oil, because the minute you're using blenders or oils, you're smoothing out your paper, and that restricts your ability to add more pigment over the top or to erase as well. It becomes more and more difficult to erase because now you're squishing the wax into the surface of the paper, into the weave. Does that make sense? So it's right at the end. Do you do that? 90% of the time, you're letting the pencil do all the work for you. So let's do just one or two little, if you've got pencils, go ahead and do it with me. Take a red. And let's put some red down over here. So just to cue you in with where we're going, draw yourself a circle. What the heck, I'll use that as a circle. Just a more or less circle. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to do just a really quick little color wheel. Really quick. Put yourself some red down over there. Don't press too hard. Try not to add too much pressure. Take your yellow. Pop that down over there. Now I want to show you what I'm doing as I'm working. I think let's do that, and I'm going to pop this guy in the corner. Because what I want to show you is how I'm working with the pencils. So I've now just used the yellow, I put him back. Now I'm going for a blue. So let's look for a blue. And I put my blue down in place. You've got to keep your pencils nice and organized so that you don't waste time looking for them. That's the one main reason why you've separated them into their little spectrums when you got them in the beginning. So now let's say, for example, this yellow, the blue, and the red. I'm using those three pencils a lot. So I don't want to keep looking for which pencil did I use last. Oh, gee, those are so close to each other. Was it this one? Was it that one? If you're just using those few, just put them skew like that for now. The minute you're done with them, then you can flip them straight. But if you're using lots of pencils, it's, can you see I've got lots of air between that one, and that one. And they're not going to get mixed up, and they're completely different colors. So they're not going to get mixed up. I'm not going to be confused with where they go. If you're using lots of different blues, it's better to put them back on his place and pick it up. I promise you, you will pick up the correct blue that you want, because you're going to look at it. I'm looking at the tip. I'm not looking there. Looking at the tip. Yeah, no, that's a good blue. I'll use that one. Well, yeah, this is a good blue. I'll use that one, and so on. All right, so let's mix a purple over here. So I'm going to put down a little bit of blue. You could have started with a red in this case as well, because it's a 50-50 kind of mix. And I'm going to put some blue down over there as well. Over there I'm going to put a bit more blue. And here I'm going to put a little bit less blue. And there you could have started with the red as well. Doesn't matter. The point is you got more, less, less. Okay, let's go with our red. Let's mix the purple first. And now you're going to have to juggle your amounts till you get the right color. So I'm not particularly using any pressure at this point. I'm letting the pencil do the work for me. As I build up that layer, this purple is becoming more and more intense. Okay, so for this guy over here, more red, and less blue. I don't think we'll do the whole color wheel. I'm going to do, say, this guy, maybe another one, then we'll take it from there. And this guy here has got even less red, and I'll leave you to do the last one. And now, needless to say, as you're working here, we're just using two colors. As you're drawing, you may find that you need to lay more than two colors over each other. Okay, so there I'm going to just add a little. There's just a little bit of blue. Like I say, you have to be patient when you're working with the colored pencils, because it's all about layers. As you lay your layers on top of each other, your colors become more intense and more vibrant. You see, I'm building up the layers. Okay, so I'll leave you to do the orange. So now, right at the end, now you're happy with your colors. Now's the time when you're going to come back in with your blender or your oil. So like this is just a small area. So this year I would just use the blender pencil just to smooth out the colors. So now you do have a bit of physical mixing working, because now you're smashing all that wax and the pigment together. As you blend here, you can also blend in different directions as well. That also helps. Okay, need to darken that one up a little bit more, but it doesn't matter. I think you're already starting to get you're getting the feel there for the color wheel. So I'll let you do that. Let's not waste time on that. Okay, so let's go back to our color wheel. That's how you mix sort of the main colors. From there, you may need to lighten up, which we've already chatted about. You vary your pressure, but you can also lay lighter colors over darker colors. For example, a white. You could maybe lay a white over a color to lighten it. So I've got a white colored pencil. So I've now already burnished that guy, or I've blended him. So it's not so easy to lay over it, but I'll just keep at it. You will eventually lay down some. Okay, so can you see how this white is now lying on top of that? So what's now happening, because I'd already blended that and my paper surface is already quite full. It's not readily accepting pigment anymore. I'm having to press harder and harder in order for this to accept more wax, for it to lie on top. So now what's happening is you're burnishing the paper, because you're pressing hard, it's really filling up the last little bit of texture that you had on the paper, and it's smoothing it out completely, and you've got a super smooth surface here at the end of the day. So after this, there's not much I can add to that. But the bottom line is, if I hadn't burnished this, if I just, let's see, there we didn't burnish or anything there, or blend or anything. It was just raw pencil laid down. Here it becomes a lot easier to add your this pigment down. This white is actually still quite hard. But you can see that is gradually starting to lighten up. But the best way is, as I said before, plan your whites and avoid them like the plague, because as you can see, it's not so easy to lighten up. To darken up, there's two ways of doing it. The first way is just to physically use a darker version of the color. So let's stick with that. So there we used, like, it's an orange, right? So orange is red and yellow mixed. So you're using more red, which is a darker color, than yellow. So from that red from that guy over there, let's pick up another red again here. And let's continue this little bit. So now I want to go even darker. So now I'm going need red, and I'm pressing really hard. And if I wanted to go even darker than that, what's the next guy down on the color wheel? Can you see that? For that to go darker, I've got to add whatever is down on the color wheel. Darker, darker. So when I get to here, I'm going to start adding purple into the mix, or in other words, blue. So now I'll just pick up a purplish pencil, and I'm going to start laying that over this guy over here. Can you see how I was darkening him up? Let's go past that edge there. So you can see the color that I'm laying down there. So it's that with the red. And if you're still not dark enough, then I'm going to start adding some blue to it. First, just a little bit at a time. In other words, I'll just keep going down on the color wheel. That's the one way of doing it. The other way of doing it is, let's just cheat here for now and just use some orange. Lay it down. Gradually press harder to get the darkest over there. Now we'll take some red. To get that even darker. So now, according to the color mixing rules, if I now need to go darker from here, what I would need to do is I would need to add some of the opposite color on the color wheel. To shadow a color, you throw in the opposite color on the color wheel. So we're working with orange. I need to throw in some blue. So you can do that here as well. Well, that is kind of what we ended up doing there. End of the day, as we went down here, we ended up on the opposite side anyway. But just adding some of the opposite. Start with too little. Always add more. So the trick when adding the opposite is to make sure that the opposite color now doesn't overtake and overpower whatever color you've got down there. So that, in other words, if I add too much blue here and a little bit of more blue than orange, Now I've actually, over here, I've got a blue shadow color, not orange shadow color. So you have to just be careful of that one. That can happen quickly when you're using the opposites. That's for that reason. I always try and first darken the color by going a color down on the color wheel before I go opposite. Okay. And you'll find that you get more vibrant. I think you agree with me. That looks more vibrant than that guy over there. But sometimes that just isn't the correct color. Sometimes that is the correct color. So then you got to know both of those options so that you can do them correctly. Okay, so we're going to do one last thing today. Oh yes, yeah. Let me just show you and then we finished with that now, right? So now you're going to take your baby oil, because now you're happy with all that. Let me zoom in. Sorry to zoom in and out so much like that. Now as we're going to take your baby oil, tap off the worst. And now you can come in and just gently blend that. And that smooths it out nicely for you. One thing you will find when you're using the baby oil is that it intensifies the colors. They become a little bit more vibrant. So you have to also just bear that in mind as you're drawing, that your colors will intensify a little bit as you work on them. So if you do want to work over this now, you can continue working on it, because your paper hasn't been burnished or anything like that. It will still accept more pigment. So sometimes you do find that even though you've done your baby oil and stuff, it hasn't quite smoothed out. Then you just come back in and you smooth out those one or two little spots, because there's now still oil lying there. As you work, that oil reacts with this and it melts basically, or dissolves the wax that's on there, and then you also get that last little blending without adding any pressure, because you're letting the oil that's lying down there do the work for you. Okay, so the last thing that I want to just chat about, and that is when you're actually drawing. There's two ways that you can work. If you used to working with traditional pencils, then you may find that just using a neutral pencil, like a gray or a dark brown or something like that, is great. Let's say, for example, you want to do an apple. So let's do a little apple-y kind of shape over here, like that. Then you may find that it's easy for you to do this kind of a thing. You're using this neutral colored pencil here, and you're going to use that to get your basic tonal values right, the basic shadings and things, so that you've got your shape. So I'm going to just do a real rough little thing over here. I don't want to spend time on this. I just want to sort of explain the concept. So let's say, for example, you got your highlight over there. So this side over here is darker. It's darker at the bottom. Darker there in that little inside piece, that recess. Something like that. So that's not giving you your basic shape and shadings and stuff. Now you come back in with the correct color. So let's say, for example, it's an orangey apple. Maybe it's, you know, something like this. So there we've got like a bit of yellows. So now you're going to lay all that over there. So you can see this has got an overall yellowy tinge to it. So I'm going to lay this over there. So the idea with working like this, it's almost like you can think of it as a grisaille glazing kind of method. Because you're used to working with pencils and going gradually darker and darker and so on, you may find that in the beginning, this is an easy way for you to get yourself up and running and going and so on. Because at the end of the day, your shadows are all dark. So that neutral color that you've used there is already giving you that bit of a neutral dark shadow color. So by the time you come back in with your correct colors, they blend in quite nicely. Okay, so I'm going to have to just gradually build up these layers here a little bit. Let me pop that back in the corner there so you can just get a feel for what pencil I'm using. So at the moment, this is all just overall laying down a tonal value. Just to get that overall color. Here's a bit more yellow over there, so I'm going to start leaving that a bit more yellowy. And then on that side there is a bit more reddish. So now I'm going to gradually go over to my reds. So can you see what's happening? We're gradually losing the actual physical color that we put down. So by the time I get here, it's starting to look decidedly like an apple and not like a gray apple anymore. Okay, press a bit harder. And in that center bit there, it's sort of a bit more of a greeny browny color. So let's find a greeny browny color. Pop that down over there. So can you see you're not stuck with that color. It doesn't look like a gray apple anymore, even though you started off all gray. So that's fine. All right. Just for what the heck, let's add ourselves at least a little bit of a lights coming from the right to the left. So let's at least just add a little bit of a shadow for this guy. So I'm just using blacks and grays for now. Not worrying too much about the colors. It's just all about getting the feel. So let's see. Add just a little bit of red into that shadow, seeing as it's a white table, white surface. So it'll reflect a bit of that. And more often than not, that's good to go. But if you do want to do some blending and just smooth things out. Now, you see, I'm pretty much done. Now's when I'll come out with my blending stick, or if it's a large area, I'll come back in with the oil. And I'll do that final little bit of smoothing. But this guy, I mean, the apple has got all sorts of little textures and stuff in it, so we don't want to have it perfect. That's good enough. All right, so let's do another one. So the other way is just to use the correct color, the correct places, straight off. Instead of doing that initial little layer. So now, let me zoom back to here for a second. If you used to doing watercolors, for example, or painting in oils and so on, then working straight off just with the correct colors is easy, because your brain is already used to processing. Let me just grab two random pencils over here. Let's say that one and that one, right? Oh, there we can see them. Your brain is used to processing that this is darker than that one. And your brain is used to converting this thing's tonal value. In other words, if I had to change that color and that color into black and white, if I had to take a photograph and I convert it to black and white, your brain is used to seeing that that guy is darker and that guy is lighter, which is easy. Now let's do something like this. Yeah, I've got two completely different colors, all good, right? But now, if I had to convert that, because their tonal values are roughly the same. So if I did now go and convert that to black and white, these things would look the same. They look identical. You wouldn't be able to tell which one is lighter and darker because they got the same tonal value. And that's where doing the grisaille glazing way is better as far as that's concerned. If you knew, then I suggest you work like that, because that first gets your brain used to computing. This is darker, that's lighter, so that when you lay the colors down, automatically you've got lighter areas and you've got darker areas. So you know, all right, there it's darker, I need to press harder. Here it's lighter, I must press soft. So it helps you. It's a sort of a tool to help you get the hang of that quicker and sooner. If you're used to painting with oils or watercolors or whatever, where you know you're used to working from light to dark with the watercolors, then it becomes easier. Your brain is used to computing those things. Then you can use this straight up, use the correct color, correct place method. So I think we have been going long, so I'll stick with the, let's maybe just do that. We'll stick with also just a small little apple. Let's put that guy around there somewhere, like that. Now remember, I've got pencil here. So the first thing that I want to do is just erase any incorrect construction lines, like that. Then I need to lighten those marks. I'm going to take my blue tack and just roll over it a few times, so that by the time I'm done, those lines aren't going to shine through. Mylan, I'm going to answer that question when we're done. I think it'll be a more appropriate time, eh? Okay, so now we're going to use the correct color, the correct places. So let's just pop this guy down here as an example. Let's just say that. So we can see the two. Can you see with something like this, even here by the darkest side, I've got that underlying bit of a yellowness to it. So I'm going to start with a yellowish color, and I'm going to lay that down over the entire area. Because we're starting from light through to dark, so I'm going to very gently lay that down. And now this first layer may be so light you can barely see it, it's fine. With colored pencils, it's all about the layers. It's all about the layers. So I can just see that there's a little bit there, and that's good because I need to also, remember, I need to preserve my whites. So I've got that guy, and now I'm looking to see, am I quite there yet? If I look there, I think I'm almost there. So let's just see. I've got maybe a few little reflections. Let's maybe put a reflection on that edge and maybe over there somewhere. So I'm going to try and avoid those areas. So let's add a bit more stronger yellow down here. Everywhere except by those little highlighty areas. So there we go. I've got my first shading in. It's barely visible, but it's there. And I'm starting to see colors. Just barely, but I can see colors. So now I can start deciding, is that color that I've got, is it correct or not quite yet? It seems okay. I think it can probably do with a little bit more of a yellow brownie. So I've got a bit of a mustardy color that I'm going to add over there now. So all this here still under layers before we start adding any of that yummy detail. So with this, I'm avoiding those little highlighty, reflectiony bits. So slowly there's something starting to pop out at me. Slowly. Okay, the next one that now seems to be, I think I've got sort of this color seems to be more or less in place. From there, it got more of a reddish tinge. Eh? So let's pick up a red and very light, because here there isn't too much of it. So I'm going to start on the dark side and I'll gradually work my way across. And I'm just going to use a series of overlapping strokes. The way you get a smooth shading is to overlap the one line with the previous line. So let's say I'm doing a shading over here. So I'm doing this, but just exaggerated. So I've got to fill this in. So essentially you're putting a line, and you're putting a line, and you're putting a line, you're putting a line. But what you're doing is you're overlapping this line onto that one, this one onto that one. And that's giving you a nice smooth shading. You see that? And that's the thing where the colored pencil needs patience. Because if you're impatient, what's going to happen? You're going to move your pencil along too quickly. And then this happens. Can you see that? You've got places you're pressing harder, places you're pressing softer, places you've missed. And what happens? You've got an ugly drawing. It's not particularly neat. So now you're going to fix it. Now you're going to come back and you're going to try and work in between all those little marks to even everything out. And now you're really going to take time. It's better just for the first time immediately. Start off and work nice overlapping strokes. And that gives you nice smooth shadings. Okay. And that's what I'm doing. I'm just using overlapping strokes. So we're lucky with this. This apple is quite textured. It's got all those lovely little marks and dabs and dashes and things on him. So I'll be happy to just leave this guy a little bit stripy. Okay, so from here we're starting to do not too shabby, so I can go darker. See that there is now starting to look good. So now we can go darker on this side. Okay, so we have chatted about the advantages of doing it that way, by having your bit of a grayscale drawing going on first. The advantage of doing it this way, where you're just working correct colors, correct places right off the bat, is that you're getting cleaner colors. So you will find that these colors will end up being a bit more vibrant, because there you've always got that initial little gray layer. So you're starting off from a shadow version. And I think you can already start to see it. Can you see this? So yeah, I can continue building that up, and it'll look similar to this, but because you've got that essentially your opposite color on the color wheel mixed in there, it's never going to look as bright as this. I just simply can't. It's impossible. Okay, let's get a bit of a greeny color over here. So I'm pressing hard, softer as I come out. Get the little shading going on over there, and yeah, he seems to come out over here. Maybe there's a, yeah, I think it's just a bit of color there, right? Let's see, our light is coming from the right to the left, so maybe there's a bit of a shadow happening over there. Intensify that guy a bit. And let's find some browns. Add in a quick little stick over there. And a shadow. So again, this is all about pressure. No fiddling or faffing with blenders and stuff like that. I'm letting the pencils do all the work for me. Darker in there. And all the time, I've got all this lovely texture of the paper still available to me, and I can do erasing. You know, if I need to, maybe I didn't add in the highlights over there completely because I haven't done any blending or any burnishing or anything like that. I can easily still lift that guy out. Now, right at the end, I can come back in. And I can smooth all this out. If it was a larger apple, I would be using the baby oil. Okay, now maybe you want to just add that last little bit of detail. After you've done blending and burnishing and stuff like that, that's when you can come back in here and just add the last little bit of details. We've got those little marks and things here on the apple. So we'll add a few of those guys in. There's your detail work. the kind of stuff that you can't do beforehand, because the minute you blend it, all those little guys are going to soften and blend away. So add that. A little blended marks like that. Maybe some of them aren't quite dark enough, so I'll use a darker color. This is like a purpley, bluey purple. I'll just go over some of those directly over the same mark to darken them up again. So here I'm doing a bit of optical blending using the pencil, different pencils. There we go. These are apples. Okay, so here's a good question. When you've done your drawing and it's finished, Baylen's asking, do you now use a workable fixative over here? I'm not a big fan of fixative. Never have been. I don't think I ever will be. After all this time, if I'm still not a big fan of fixative, I'm not going to. If the pigment that you're laying down was soft, like a soft pastel, then I would still maybe go ahead and say, yes, use some workable fixative, because now you sort of fixing that loose layer of pigment onto your paper so you can overwork it. That's why you would use that. Here, I think you've seen the pigment doesn't just move around. I can't just randomly put my hand on it like that and have pigment left over on my hand like you would with regular pastel. Here, I can put my hand on there and nothing's going to happen to it. So I see no reason to use fixative because it's fixed enough already. It's not going nowhere once you've put it down. So that's the reason why you're putting it on your fixative, is so that it doesn't get hurt from bumps and scratches and so on. When you finish this artwork, it's either going to be sitting inside your book where nothing can rub and scratch on it when the papers are closed. They're stuck together, so they can't shift one against the other. So it's perfectly safe over here. And when you frame it, what are you going to do? You're going to frame it behind glass, so nobody's going to touch it then anyway. So I see no reason to use fixative on these works whatsoever. The downside or the risk that you have with fixative is, you can put on too much. And flood your picture, and some of the colors and pigments of yours that you've got there will run. It could splatter. So now you've got those little splatter marks from the fixative. I've dissolved little areas on your drawing, and you've got little lighter dots. So that's not good. And the last reason why I'm not too keen, and the main reason why I'm not too keen on using fixative, is it can yellow over time. I've seen too many yellowed drawings because of the fixative, and that's just not a risk I'm prepared to take, because I spend too many hours on my drawing. I put too much of myself into those drawings to run the risk of somebody's rubbish fixative yellowing my artwork and destroying the value that the guy's got that's bought the artwork, because he's paid you good money for it, so you don't want it to destroy. So that's why I'm not a fan of fixative. Never will be. So yes, you're correct. The second guy over here is brighter, but if you continue working the other one, you can bring it up to a similar level. So don't feel that it will always be less bright. I don't think you had a problem. Let me zoom back to that camera again for a second. When you had just that, you didn't for 1 second think, oh, that's all dull and yucky, did you? Now that you got that next to each other, yes, now you've got a comparison. But if you just saw that on its own, you were quite happy with that apple, weren't you? It looked great. And I think you'll agree, I've got more pigment red pigment down there than I've got there. If I continue working with the red pigment over there, it'll come very similar brightness. So it's not a negative as far as that's concerned, but it is a positive for the guys that are coming off pure graphite work and he's never done color work before. Then that's a nice little bridge or a stepping stone into getting your brain used to working with colors. Alrighty, guys, I think we are at the end. So if you do have any last questions, go for it. Otherwise, I'll wrap it up. Do you see the guys are starting to wander off? We are well down the road now already. If you have no more questions, also just say so in the chat box. Then we don't sit here and stare at each other. The colored pencils is great fun, guys, but it's time consuming. So I'm not going to do too many, or how I'm going to put it. I'm not going to be doing the colored pencil on a regular basis like I do with the other classes. I just simply don't have the time. But every now and again, I'll slot us in a nice little class like this. Alrighty, I think everybody's either wandered off or fallen asleep. Hopefully not. So let's wrap it up. Alrighty, so there we have it. It's great fun drawing with the colored pencils. In the following classes, we'll get to know our pencils a little bit better. I'll see you then. Cheerio. Bye, guys. Have a wonderful week. Thanks for joining me.